Grand Marshal Vex Terry stood at the command deck of the Meridian Alliance's flagship Eternal Dawn, her iridescent scales shifting colors as she studied the holographic display of Earth's solar system. The newly discovered human civilization had achieved faster-than-light travel barely 2 decades ago, yet they'd already established a presence throughout their entire star system. It should have been impressive, but what Vex Terry saw instead made her upper lip curl in distaste. "Look at this catastrophe," she muttered, gesturing at the scattered points of light representing Earth's space fleet. They turned their entire system into a junkyard. Her second-in-command, Strategic Director Zyron, moved closer to examine the display. His cybernetic eye whirred as it adjusted focus. "The humans appear to lack any understanding of proper military vessel architecture, Marshal. Their ships follow no recognized design principles." Vex Terry zoomed in on a cluster of vessels near Mars. The ships were a hodgepodge of shapes and sizes, some cylindrical, others boxy, a few appearing to be cobbled together from multiple smaller craft. None possessed the sleek, aggressive lines of proper warships. Several appeared to be nothing more than repurposed cargo vessels with crude modifications. "Their largest vessel doesn't even have a proper hull," Zyron observed, highlighting a massive structure that appeared to be assembled from interconnected modules. "It looks like they've simply welded habitat sections together. Primitive." "Send the standard greeting," Vex Terry ordered. "Let's see how they respond to a proper military force." She was already mentally composing her report to the Alliance Council. This would be a simple integration. The humans clearly needed guidance to join galactic society properly. The communication officer transmitted the greeting, and within moments, a response came through. The holoscreen filled with the image of a human female with dark skin and silver-streaked hair, wearing what appeared to be a simple gray uniform devoid of any ornamentation. "This is Admiral Helena Santos of the Earth Defense Force," the human said calmly. "Welcome to Sol System. I notice your weapons systems are powered up. Is there a particular reason for that?" Vex Terry felt a flicker of annoyance at the human's direct questioning. "Standard procedure for first contact scenarios. I am Grand Marshal Vex Terry of the Meridian Alliance. We're here to begin integration proceedings for your civilization into the greater galactic community." Integration. Admiral Santos raised an eyebrow. "That's an interesting choice of words, Marshal. We weren't aware we needed to be integrated into anything. Your civilization has shown remarkable progress in achieving FTL travel," Vex Terry said, trying to sound diplomatic. "However, your current level of development," she gestured at the sensor readings of Earth's fleet, "suggests you require significant guidance to reach acceptable standards." The human admiral's expression remained neutral, but something flickered in her eyes. "I see. And these standards, they would be the Meridian Alliance's standards, I assume." The Alliance has established the governing principles for proper civilization development across 12 sectors, Vex Terry explained. "Your ships, for instance, would need to be completely redesigned. We can provide you with proper military vessel templates." "Marshal," Santos interrupted, "I'm afraid there's been a misunderstanding. We're not interested in redesigning our fleet to meet your standards. Our vessels serve their purposes perfectly well." Vex Terry's scales shifted to a deep purple of frustration. "Admiral, surely you can't be serious. That construct near your 4th planet appears to be held together with industrial fasteners. It's hardly suitable for the Prometheus." Santos smiled slightly. "Would you like a demonstration of what she's capable of?" Before Vex Terry could respond, her tactical officer called out in alarm. "Marshal." Energy spiked from the human vessel. This can't be right." The massive, ungainly ship that had appeared to be nothing more than connected habitat modules suddenly began to transform. Sections rotated, panels shifted, and what had looked like crude industrial connectors revealed themselves to be disguised weapon ports. In less than 30 seconds, the awkward structure had reconfigured itself into a bristling weapon platform that the Alliance's sensors struggled to even classify. "What you're seeing, Marshal," Santos said quietly, is humanity's approach to space warfare. We don't believe in broadcasting our capabilities. Every vessel in our fleet is designed to appear as non-threatening as possible, until it needs to be otherwise. Vexteri's tactical display was suddenly alive with new sensor readings as other human ships began revealing hidden capabilities. What had appeared to be simple cargo haulers unveiled advanced electronic warfare suites. Crude mining vessels showed energy signatures that suggested weapons far more sophisticated than their exterior suggested. Your integration procedure, Santos continued, assumes that military capability can be measured by how closely a civilization follows your templates. Humanity rejected that philosophy centuries ago. We believe the best weapon is the one your opponent doesn't recognize until it's too late. The Marshal's scales had shifted to the pale blue of uncertainty. She had come expecting to find a primitive civilization in need of guidance. Instead, she was facing something far more dangerous, a species that had mastered the art of deception on a military scale. Perhaps, Vexteri said carefully, we should discuss this integration process as equals. Admiral Santos nodded, her slight smile returning. That would be wise, Marshal. And please, power down your weapons. They're making our gunners nervous. And trust me, you don't want to see what happens when they get nervous. As Vexteri gave the order to stand down, she realized the Meridian Alliance would need to completely reassess its first contact protocols. They had almost made a catastrophic mistake based on appearances, and she had a feeling that was exactly what the humans had been counting on. Strategic Director Zyron spent the next 12 hours analyzing every scrap of data they had collected about the human fleet. His cybernetic eye hadn't stopped whirring since the Prometheus revealed its true nature, and the more he discovered, the more disturbed he became. Marshal, he called out, bringing up a new holographic display in the Eternal Dawn's command center. You need to see this. Vexteri approached, her scales now a muted gray of concentration. The display showed a detailed analysis of what they had initially dismissed as a cluster of antiquated solar collection satellites near Venus. These aren't power collectors at all, Zyron explained, highlighting various sections. The solar panels are actually metamaterial arrays. Each one can generate focused electromagnetic pulses capable of disrupting our shield harmonics. The humans have created a defensive web that could disable our entire fleet if we tried to push past it. How did we miss this? Vexteri demanded, though she already knew the answer. They had missed it because they were meant to miss it. There's more, Zyron continued, switching to another display. Those maintenance drones we detected around their lunar bases, they're carrying quantum entanglement sensors. Our stealth systems would be useless against them. And those debris fields we noted in the outer system, automated weapon platforms, disguised to look like abandoned equipment. The Marshal's scales shifted to deep green, the color of grudging admiration. They turned their entire solar system into a trap. A trap we nearly walked right into, Zyron agreed. But what concerns me most is this. He brought up an image of what appeared to be a simple space station orbiting Earth. We initially classified this as a civilian research facility. However, I've detected patterns in its thermal emissions that suggest it's actually a massive computational array. They're running combat simulations, Marshal. Millions of them, cycling through every possible scenario of conflict with our forces. A new communication request flashed on their screens. Admiral Santos was requesting a conference. Vexteri took a moment to compose herself before accepting. Marshal, Santos greeted them, still wearing that same understated gray uniform. I trust your analysis teams have been busy. You've been expecting this conversation, Vexteri stated. It wasn't a question. For the past 15 years, Santos confirmed. Ever since we detected your long-range scout ships at the edge of our system, did you think we didn't notice them? Zyron stiffened. Those scouts had been using the Alliance's most advanced stealth technology. They should have been undetectable. You see, Marshal, Santos continued, humanity learned long ago that the greatest advantage isn't superior firepower or advanced technology. It's the ability to make your adversary underestimate you. Every piece of primitive technology you've seen has been carefully crafted to create a specific impression. The solar collectors, Vex Terry said. Defensive screens, yes. We found that clean energy infrastructure makes an excellent disguise for military technology. No one looks too closely at power generation systems. Santos' expression remained neutral, but there was a hint of pride in her voice. Just as no one questions why a species might want to clean up orbital debris. The weapon platforms in the outer system, Zyron muttered. Precisely. We've had centuries of practice at this, Marshal. Earth's history is filled with examples of military forces disguising their true capabilities. We simply adapted those principles to space warfare. Vex Terry studied the human admiral carefully. Why are you telling us this now? Because you're starting to understand the real lesson here, Santos replied. The Meridian Alliance approaches space warfare like it's a parade ground demonstration. Everything neat, standardized, and clearly displayed. Humanity knows better. We know that true strength lies in making your opponent question everything they think they know. The computational array, Vex Terry said suddenly. You're not just running combat simulations, are you? You're analyzing our reactions. This entire situation is another test. For the first time, Santos smiled fully. Very good, Marshal. Yes, every moment since you entered our system has been carefully orchestrated. We needed to know if the Alliance was capable of learning, of moving past its preconceptions. Your response in the next few moments will determine a great deal about our future relationship. Vex Terry felt the weight of the moment. Her initial mission of simple integration had transformed into something far more complex, a test of the Alliance's ability to adapt and understand. She looked at the tactical displays again, seeing them with new eyes. How many other capabilities remained hidden? How many layers of deception had they yet to uncover? Admiral Santos, she said finally, I believe it's time we had a very different kind of discussion about Earth's place in the galactic community. I agree, Santos replied. But first, Marshal, you might want to check that asteroid approaching your port bow. It's not quite what it appears to be. As Vex Terry's sensors suddenly screamed warnings about the supposedly harmless space rock, she realized humanity's lessons in humility were far from over. The asteroid approaching the eternal dawn suddenly shimmered and vanished, replaced by a sleek vessel unlike anything the Alliance had yet seen in Earth's fleet. Its hull seemed to drink in light, making it difficult for even Zyron's enhanced vision to focus on its shape. Quantum metamaterial cloaking, Admiral Santos explained, her image still calm on the view screen. Developed by our theoretical physics division, the ship you're seeing is the Shadowdancer, one of our actual warships. Vex Terry's scales rippled with surprise. All this deception, and you still maintain traditional military vessels. Of course, Santos replied. The art of deception includes letting your opponent think they've uncovered all your secrets. Though I should mention, the Shadowdancer isn't quite a traditional warship either. As if on cue, the vessel began to fragment, splitting into dozens of smaller craft that moved with perfect coordination. Each segment was fully autonomous, yet they maintained a quantum link that allowed them to function as a single entity when needed. Swarm architecture, Zyron breathed, his cybernetic eye struggling to track all the components. But the energy requirements would be substantial. Santos finished for him. Yes. That's what the solar collectors are actually for. Well, that, and the defensive screens we mentioned earlier. Efficiency through multiplicity of purpose, another human specialty. Before Vex Terry could respond, a priority alert flashed across her command console. A segment of the Alliance fleet, positioned at the system's edge, had just gone dark. Not damaged or destroyed, simply disappeared from all sensors. Ah, Santos said, checking something off-screen. I see Admiral Chen's task force has arrived. Chen, Vex Terry demanded. There's another human fleet. Marshal, did you really think we'd keep all our assets in one system? The ships you've seen here are just our home defense force. Admiral Chen commands our expeditionary fleet. They've been shadowing your forces since you entered the sector. The tactical display suddenly blazed with new contacts as another human fleet seemed to materialize from nowhere. These ships bore no resemblance to either the disguised vessels in the Sol system or the metamaterial-cloaked Shadowdancer. Instead, they appeared to be made primarily of light itself, holographic projections overlaid on some kind of exotic matter framework. Hard light construction, Santos explained, noting their confusion, allows us to reconfigure our ship's physical structure in real time. Quite useful for adapting to new tactical situations. Zyron's analysis programs were approaching overload, trying to catalog all the new technological principles on display. "This is impossible," he muttered. "No single species could have developed all these different approaches to space warfare." "You're absolutely right," Santos agreed, "which is why we didn't try to develop them all at once. What you're seeing is the result of centuries of human innovation, with each generation building on different principles. Some focused on deception, others on adaptation, still others on pure technological advancement. We kept every approach that worked, discarded those that didn't, and found ways to make them all work together." The Marshal watched as the human expeditionary fleet took up positions around her forces, creating a three-dimensional web of overlapping fields of fire. The precision of their movement suggested levels of coordination that the Alliance's rigid command structure couldn't hope to match. "You have to understand, Marshal," Santos continued, her tone almost sympathetic. "Humans have never approached warfare, or anything else, from a single direction. We don't believe in proper military doctrine or standardized solutions. Every problem is an opportunity to try something new, to combine old ideas in new ways. The Alliance Council will never accept this," Vex Terry said, though her tone lacked conviction. "Our entire civilization is built on standardization, on known quantities, and proven methods." "Then perhaps it's time for the Alliance to evolve," Santos suggested. "Look at your tactical display, Marshal. Your fleet is surrounded by three completely different approaches to space warfare, each effective in its own way, each capable of neutralizing your forces through entirely different means. This isn't just a demonstration of military capability. It's a lesson in the power of diversity in thought and approach." A new alert sounded. The Alliance vessels that had gone dark were reappearing on sensors, now escorted by more of the hard light vessels. Admiral Chen's face appeared on a secondary screen, her expression as composed as Santos. "Marshal Vex Terry," Chen nodded in greeting. "Your outer patrol fleet has been thoroughly scanned and analyzed. I must say, your standardized design philosophy made it remarkably easy to develop countermeasures. You might want to consider adding some variety to your tactical doctrine." Vex Terry's scales had settled into a deep blue of resignation and understanding. The humans hadn't just outmaneuvered them militarily. They had demonstrated the fundamental flaw in the Alliance's entire approach to civilization. Standardization had become stagnation, and humanity was about to force them to confront that uncomfortable truth. In the tense silence of the Eternal Dawn's command center, Vex Terry made a decision that would reshape the future of the Meridian Alliance. Her scales shifted to the rare silver of transformation, a color so seldom seen that Zyron's cybernetic eye had to recalibrate to record it. "Admiral Santos, Admiral Chen," she addressed both human commanders. "I request a direct meeting. Not through screens or proxies. I believe it's time we truly understood each other." The two human admirals exchanged glances through their respective view screens. "An interesting proposal," Santos replied. "Though I assume you understand why we might be hesitant to meet in person with someone who arrived in our system with powered weapons." "I do," Vex Terry acknowledged, "which is why I'm offering the Eternal Dawn as the meeting location. Our flagship will power down all systems except life support and basic gravity. Your security teams can sweep it beforehand, and you can maintain whatever defensive measures you deem necessary." Chen raised an eyebrow. "You'd allow us to examine your flagship's systems." "You've already proven you could take it by force if you wished," Vex Terry replied. I'm choosing to make it an offering of trust instead." 20 minutes later, Vex Terry stood in her ship's main conference chamber, watching as human security teams completed their sweep using devices that seemed to phase through solid matter. The room's usual grandeur, designed to intimidate visitors with displays of Alliance technological prosperity, seemed hollow now. Santos and Chen arrived together, their simple uniforms a stark contrast to the ornate chamber. In person, both carried themselves with a quiet confidence that no viewscreen could fully convey. They were accompanied by a third human, a tall, elderly man introduced as Dr. Marcus Webb, Earth's Chief of Strategic Development. "Your ship is quite impressive, Marshal," Webb said, running a hand along one of the crystalline display panels. "Beautiful engineering, perfect symmetry in every system. I can see why the Alliance believes in standardization. When you find something that works this well, it's tempting to consider it the ultimate solution." "But that's the trap, isn't it?" Vex Terry asked quietly. "Perfection becomes stagnation." "Precisely," Webb smiled. "Humanity learned long ago that perfection is the enemy of progress. We embrace the chaos of multiple approaches, the inefficiency of parallel development, the messiness of competing ideas. It's why our ships look like a random collection of different philosophies, because that's exactly what they are." "Tell me," Chen added, "how does the Alliance develop new technologies?" "We have research institutes," Zyron replied. "They propose improvements to existing systems, which are tested against established benchmarks. If they meet our standards for efficiency and reliability, they're implemented across the fleet. And if an idea doesn't meet those standards," Santos pressed. "It's discarded," Zyron said. Then, understanding dawning in his organic eye, "We never consider that it might be useful in a different context, or that combining it with other failed ideas might create something revolutionary." Webb nodded. "Humanity's greatest breakthroughs often come from combining discarded concepts in new ways. The quantum metamaterial cloaking. It began as 3 separate failed projects, one in stealth technology, one in quantum computing, and one in material science. Separately, they were deemed impractical. Together, they changed the face of space warfare." Vex Terry moved to the chamber's viewport, looking out at the assembled fleets. The contrast was stark. Her own ships, identical and orderly, versus the human vessels in all their varied glory. "How do you manage it?" she asked. "The complexity, the coordination between different systems and strategies." "We don't try to manage it," Santos explained. "We let it manage itself. Every ship captain knows their vessel's capabilities and limitations. They train to work with whatever combination of ships they might encounter. Flexibility becomes second nature." "It's inefficient," Chen admitted. "We spend more resources on training, on maintaining different types of systems, on developing new approaches that might never work. But that inefficiency is our strength. An enemy that defeats one approach finds itself facing 3 more it's never seen before." "And now?" Vex Terry turned back to her guests. "What happens now that we know your capabilities?" "That depends on you," Webb replied. "We've shown you our strength not to threaten, but to teach. The question is the Alliance ready to learn?" Vex Terry's scales rippled through several colors before settling on the silver of transformation once again. "The Alliance Council will resist. Change is difficult for us. Change is difficult for everyone," Santos said softly. "But consider this. We've shown you only a fraction of our capabilities, yet already your strategic director's mind is buzzing with new possibilities. Imagine what our civilizations could accomplish if we approached the future as partners, combining your precision and efficiency with our creativity and adaptability." The Marshal looked at Zyron, who nodded slowly. His cybernetic eye had been recording everything, but more importantly, his organic eye shone with something she hadn't seen in years. Excitement. "Then let us begin," Vex Terry said. "Not with integration, but with exchange. Not with standardization, but with growth." She touched a control panel, and the conference chamber's displays came alive with Alliance technical data. You've shown us your strength. Allow us to show you ours, and together we'll forge something greater than either of us could achieve alone." 6 months after the historic meeting aboard the Eternal Dawn, the Sol system had become a symbol of transformation throughout the galaxy. Where once the Meridian Alliance fleet had arrived intending to enforce standardization, now ships of wildly varying designs moved in careful coordination through the space lanes. Grand Marshal Vex Terry stood on the observation deck of humanity's newest space station, Convergence, watching as Alliance engineers worked alongside human technicians to integrate their technologies. Her scales shimmered with iridescent patterns that would have been considered chaotic by Alliance standards just months ago. Now they reflected the growing acceptance of change within her civilization. "Remarkable progress," Admiral Santos said, joining her at the viewport. "Your engineers have already helped us improve the efficiency of our quantum drives by 30%, while your innovative approach to shield harmonics has revolutionized our defensive capabilities," Vex Terry replied. The Council was particularly impressed by the demonstration last week. They both watched as a new vessel emerged from the shipyards near Mars. It was a joint project, the first of its kind, combining Alliance precision engineering with human adaptive technology. The ship's sleek lines spoke of Alliance influence, but its ability to reconfigure itself for different missions was purely human inspiration. "The Synthesis," Santos nodded toward the ship, "a fitting name for our first collaborative vessel, though I hear some of your younger officers have started calling it the Rule Breaker." Vex Terry's scales flickered with amusement. "Yes, there's been something of a cultural shift among our newer generations. They've started questioning everything, asking why we do things certain ways, proposing alternatives. It's giving the Council members headaches. Growth is often uncomfortable," Dr. Webb commented, joining them. The elderly scientist had become a key figure in the knowledge exchange program. "But necessary. Your civilization's dedication to perfection created incredible foundations. Now you're learning to build something new on top of them." A flash of light drew their attention as the Shadow Dancer emerged from Quantum Cloak nearby, its swarm components executing a complex dance that would have been impossible under rigid Alliance protocols. Alongside it, an Alliance cruiser demonstrated the new hybrid defense system that allowed it to adapt its shield frequencies in real time. "We're already seeing changes throughout Alliance space," Vex Terry noted. "Some worlds have begun experimenting with multiple approaches to colonial development, rather than following the standard templates. Others are reviving abandoned research projects, looking at them with new perspectives." "And Earth?" Webb asked. "How has this alliance affected humanity's development?" Santos smiled. "We're learning too. Your focus on efficiency has helped us refine our more experimental approaches. It turns out there's value in having some standards after all." "Balance," Vex Terry mused. "The thing we never knew we were missing. We thought perfection meant finding the one best way to do everything. When really," Webb finished, "perfection is having the wisdom to know when to standardize and when to innovate, when to maintain order and when to embrace chaos." The station's AI announced the arrival of Admiral Chen's task force, returning from their joint training exercises in deep space. The fleet that emerged from hyperspace was a testament to the new philosophy. Alliance ships flying in formation with human vessels, each maintaining their unique characteristics while working in harmony. "The Council has approved the expansion of the exchange program," Vex Terry announced. "We'll be sending ships to Earth for retrofit and accepting human technical advisors at our shipyards. Some of the more conservative members are still uncomfortable, but they can't argue with the results." "And what about you, Marshal?" Santos asked. "How do you feel about all this change?" Vex Terry watched as a training squadron of mixed ships executed a complex maneuver nearby. An Alliance destroyer, its traditional weapons supplemented with human adaptive technology, flew in perfect sync with a human vessel that had been upgraded with Alliance precision systems. "I feel like we were all blind," she said finally. "The Alliance thought strength came from uniformity, from every ship and soldier being exactly the same. Humanity thought strength came from constant innovation, from never showing your true capabilities. The truth is, real strength comes from having the courage to learn from each other. As if to emphasize her point, the synthesis began its first set of trial maneuvers. Its hull gleamed with alliance perfection, while its movements displayed human creativity. It was neither purely alliance nor purely human. It was something new, something that could only exist because two civilizations had learned to see beyond their preconceptions. To the future, Webb raised a glass that had materialized from a nearby synthesizer, another product of their combined technologies. To diversity and unity, Santos added. To perfect imperfection, Vex Terry finished, her scales rippling with all the colors of possibility. Far below them, Earth continued its eternal dance around the sun, its orbit now shared by ships of all designs and philosophies. In the depths of space, other civilizations were beginning to notice the change in the Alliance, the way it had begun to evolve beyond its rigid patterns. Some were curious, others concerned, but all could see that something unprecedented had occurred. Humanity had not just earned the Alliance's respect, they had helped forge a new way forward for both civilizations. In doing so, they had proved that the greatest victory wasn't in winning a war, but in preventing one by showing that different approaches could not only coexist, but strengthen each other. As the synthesis completed its trials, its hybrid systems performing beyond all expectations, it stood as a symbol of what was possible when prejudice gave way to understanding, when the pursuit of perfection was balanced with the embrace of change. The future that stretched before them was neither orderly nor chaotic, but a beautiful synthesis of both, exactly as it